So, but it's a real thing because the spirits of these lands are waking up, and people are in their DNA and their connected space to these very particular places and these very particular, interesting angelic forces and land forces, and they want to hold up the structures of light that have been there. There really are ancestral lands.
Yep, I think that's a really important point. Yep. Yeah.
It's very real.
Do you
There's
think
ancestral plants, there's ancestral mountains,
Yeah.
there's ancestral animals, there's ancestral rivers and lakes. And it's connected at the human level, the DNA level, and it moves all the way up into the heavenly sphere.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mystic Gateway Podcast. Again, thank you very much for all the subscribes, all the nice comments I'm getting. I'm just getting some great feedback from the last show. As I mentioned, I had a bit of a break, but we are back now, refreshed, extra red because I've been in the sun. But today's guest is somebody who I've listened to I listened to many years ago on a podcast called the Numa Project. And I was, I guess what you class as an awakening Christian at the time. And you were talking about a lot of things that just blew my mind. But ever since then, you've always been out there and very open-minded. But Taylor Remington, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Glad to be on here and ready to go on this journey with you.
Right. We were just talking for a while off camera, and it's just like, we need to press record because we're talking some good stuff here. But like I say, for people who may not know who you are and what you do, why don't you just give a brief description of yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So hello everyone. My name's Taylor. So a little bit about myself. I have been in, the Christian mysticism world for, I don't know, the past 15, 16 years. And also just in mysticism, the world of mysticism in general, not just in Christianity, but in a whole, bunch of other streams and whatnot and explorations, for a long time. And I teach meditation. I teach Christian meditation, helping Christians get into meditation, helping them, learn how to get into certain states where they can feel more connected to God, where they can become aware of their connection to God, to work through their nervous systems and their emotional responses and their thought responses, and all of those various things. So there's a very practical side to me in my daily life, and also in things that I help with people, but also, I'm a mystic at heart, a philosopher at heart. I'm a big learner. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly reading, constantly exploring, and always pushing into new boundaries. And it's just part of this like deep desire and passion of mine to understand more, to and to be able to help people through this various processes of mystical learning and things that I've journeyed through. And so there's a lot. This is a very surface level of it, but there's just a lot here that we can go into, that we will go into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I currently live in Spain with my wife and three kids. I run my own business from here as well, and but uh, at night I'm a mystic, and during the day I run my stuff, and so it's a beautiful thing. I get to balance both worlds, but yeah, let's hop into some crazy. Let's go for it.
Yeah, good. Like I said, we were just talking off camera. We've got a lot in common and a lot of same connections and things. And I love what you just said. This journey to understand. The mystic path is. Because I would consider myself a Christian mystic. I mean, I always find people who are far more better at these things than I am. But that's kind of, I think, part of the journey. When I say better, I mean like we're all learning, aren't we? And it's like
Hmm.
the further I go, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't have a clue. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think it's like this weird paradox of knowledge is the more we learn, the more we realize, like, wow, the bigger the picture gets that we don't know and we don't see.
Hmm. Hmm.
Would you have any do you experience that like on your journey and on your
Oh
sort of
yeah.
expanse? Because I mean, when I've heard you in the past, you're very knowledgeable. You've got great information on ancient civilizations and Egypt, and you were into these things years before I was. And
Yeah.
again, it was listening to you that got me into some of these things, believe it or not. So yeah, just this journey. I mean, how do you stay grounded, and how do you stay how do you cope in the material world with all this kind of this out there thinking?
Yeah. That's really funny. That has been a big part of my life, I would say, over the last like 4 or 5 years. It's changed a lot.
Mm,
So in like the initial phases of my journey, I would say that um I very much got, I would say, lost in my headspace, and also in this like kind of like thinking space, and even sort of this transcendent space.
mm,
And over time, I would say that the Holy Spirit re-grounded me back into my body, and um, has been reworking me and trying to show me about the horizontal place of reality that I'm experiencing here now on earth as a sacred temple of divine spirit, and what that connection point looks like within an embodied awareness. And so um, over time, I mean, there's a sort of like fluctuation in a movement where, I will definitely like dive into an idea or something for a bit and really, focus and push into it to sort of expand my understanding in a various topic or whatever. But and I think it's also helpful as well being a parent where, your kids are constantly bringing you back to the present moment,
mm.
back to what needs to be here, done now. And I think between both of these movements of the spirit and my kids, over the last couple years, 3 years, let's say, my own practice and my own understanding has radically shifted even more. And within that engagement, I feel the opening of the sacred world space,
Right.
opening itself up even more in my life. And, from that particular place, it allows me to essentially be grounded through all these various things. But going back to the other thing too, is like, yeah, like the further you go, obviously you learn, the more you understand, the less you realize you understand too.
Hmm.
And also in the pursuit of understanding, you have to let go of what you understand.
Right. Right.
Right. So it's a constant of letting go and receiving and growing, and letting go and receiving and growing. And it's
Yeah.
sort of like this winter, spring, summer, fall, cycle that you can develop inside yourself, where you stay rooted and grounded in connection into relationship and in presence. But through that encounter and through that relationality, the seasons and the transformations just sort of like naturally unfold when you hold an open hand to the processes that you're going through.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's an important point because times and seasons, which that's completely a biblical concept. For every time
Hmm.
there is and season for everything under the heavens, I think is what it says.
Yeah.
Um, because I've been on a journey of talking about astrology and looking
Hmm.
into these things, which is completely forbidden in the church world,
Hmm.
completely demonized. But and honestly, my honest thoughts were, looking at people who, or not people, but some people who were into it. Um, I found like it was sometimes used as a bit of a scapegoat for negative circumstances. Like people would make poor choices, suffer negative consequences, go, oh, it's because of the sky.
Hmm.
Um, but in my skepticism, there's an undeniable reality to this that I know I'm being prodded to look into. Is this
Yeah.
something that you've looked into as a Christian mystic?
Yeah. I mean, I've taught a whole course on Christian astrology. I call it astrotheology. I consider myself like an amateur astrologer.
Right.
Probably one of the only few Christian astrologers, around, I would say.
Mm.
It's something that I've been exploring for uh, like the last 14 years of my life.
Wow.
And it's something that, yeah, like you said, it's a weird mix of things, right? So on one hand, you get people that sort of horoscope their life with it. They can sort of blame certain circumstances or, um, you know, should you wear this colored t-shirt today or not
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Libra, whatever,
Yeah.
Um, in my journey through all of this, um, and as you've been learning and you've been going into it, it's a very rich and complex system that God has
Right.
created. And there's more than enough biblical things to justify its practice. Obviously, you have a couple parts where the priests are telling the people not to do it,
Hmm.
but when that was written and why they wrote it is interesting for people to go study and then go study then where all the other places in it is a supportive of it,
Right.
which there's 10x more supportive things than there are negative things.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a very complex thing, but at the same time it does reveal um, unconscious personality and conscious personality traits of individuals so that you can sort of understand how to better navigate, I would say, like the emotional and mental complexion that each
Yeah.
person has.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and obviously that's more of like the Western form of it
Yeah.
on the tropical side. And but it's, you know, as we are growing into different levels, like it's so like I think one of the things that Christians sort of get locked into their framework of understanding is they sort of see time and even growth or even spirituality as sort of locked in time, right? So what God or what these people that wrote this text said in the Bronze Age is the truth for today as it was back then,
Right.
or um, their understanding then is the exact same today, or the revelation that they had then of XYZ is exactly the same we have today. But we know that that's not how it works.
Hmm.
We know that the human is constantly evolving and growing. We know that God is still working in us and through us. I mean, Jesus even said that like his followers would do greater things than he did.
Right.
But we don't really see that yet. But we know that that's possible within the timeline of history. So, what is that going to look like when that starts to take place? It's going to be offensive to the religious minded, or
Right.
let's call them uh, the system minded.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, the system
Hmm.
minded. Because I don't even want to use the word religion, right? Because that word gets poo pooed on too much, and it means just to bound together. It's a system minded thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good
And
point.
Um, it's a system-minded thing, and but the reality of it is like we see everything that God has created is in growth, that everything has a process of, a deeper understanding and deeper unpacking. Time is, I would say this, that reality itself is the disclosure of God to humanity.
Hmm. That's a great statement. That should be a t-shirt.
Yeah, should be a t-shirt.
Say that again. See if you can remember. Say that again.
Uh, um, the events of history or the events of time is the disclosure of God
Right.
to
Yeah.
humanity.
Hmm.
So it's the like all of reality is this is God's disclosure.
Right.
So, 2000 years ago, that disclosure looked like XYZ within the region of Palestine with Jesus.
Hmm.
But here we are 2000 years later, and this disclosure of God is still taking place.
Right.
So part of this disclosure of God is also a disclosure of understanding and wisdom and clarity. And one of those dimensions of that wisdom and understanding of the process of the spirit is within understanding the nature and the movement of the stars, because the stars are not just stars, the planets are not just planets.
Go on then. What are
So
they? What are they?
well, look, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can take it. Right? So the traditional mystical Christian understanding that works through the works of Pseudo Dionysius, who wrote in like the 6th, 7th century AD, and you can see all of his angelic hierarchy that he did,
Hmm.
which is a seminal work within Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
They saw the planets as disclosure, as within the physical, as um, uh, the revelation of angelic beings that are actually within, let's say, the noumenal sphere, the spiritual sphere, but
Mm.
that in the material sphere, you know, we see it as Saturn, or we see it as the sun.
Right.
And so they have their names for it, but regardless, at the end of the day, whether you go with the traditional pseudo Dionysian picture of it, or a Rudolf Steiner picture of it, who's writing in the 20th century about his current understandings of what these things are as a Christian mystic, regardless, what you see when you get into the spirit, which is undeniable and it's an objective reality,
Hmm.
is that these are beings.
Right. Right. Like alive. The planets are alive.
They're alive,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
the earth is alive.
Right. Right.
And um, their nervous system or their eyes or um, their organs of perception are
Hmm.
different than ours.
Hmm.
But we can see the earth's organs of perception very clearly because we are that.
Right. Oh, okay. So are you getting here into the life on other planets?
Well, then if you want to move and follow just the logic of it, let's just say there is only one planet per galaxy that has life on it.
Mm.
That's what? How many galaxies do they say there's in the known universe
Trillions.
now? Trillion. So let's say
Yeah.
there's 1 trillion planets with. Well, let's say it's only half the galaxies,
Okay.
right? So we still have a trillion life forms, right? Because there's so many galaxies. I don't know
Yeah.
the exact number now. Someone
Yeah.
can fact check this and look this up. But just think about that for a second, right? So and of course, obviously, in each galaxy, there's billions and billions of stars, there's billions and billions of systems, and I'm just boiling it down to the least likely position of the vastness of the universe
Hmm.
from, a logical standpoint. And obviously we can see now in science through that we're understanding with plasma, that
Hmm.
plasma carries DNA, that it carries um, uh, in these Oort clouds, in these clouds, in these plasmic clouds, there's like, we can detect that there's actually like DNA, and there's even on the Earth where it seeds itself here to Earth. So, this plasma is everywhere. So, you know, yes, there's definitely life out there. There's no doubt about it.
It's
Um,
impossible not to
it's
be.
impossible that it's not.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So let's just cross that bridge. Okay, there's life out there. Okay, boom, done. That's just at the material level, though, we're just talking about. This
Right.
is just one plane.
Hmm.
Then you go into subtle planes.
Right.
Like if you have an out of body experience, or you get into a deep state of meditation and you move into um the nous of God, in the spirit, the vastness of God's unfolding spirit. You can see that there are just as many beings as there are in the jungle. There's that many beings that are out there in these dimensional spheres, and how
Right.
many layers there are, we don't know. But they do exist, and they're loaded. And we see this in the biblical text with Ezekiel and his ascent into places. You can even throw the Enochic text in there if you
Yep.
want.
Yep.
You have um, the book of Daniel. You
Yep.
have Abraham and his sort of encounters with stuff, right? So you have these stories that um, aren't hiding the fact that we are in a cosmic reality here of
Exactly. Yeah.
multiple different types of life forms and beings.
Hmm.
So then okay, so then we can cross that bridge. It's right there. Like, it's it just is. Okay? Like you can't, you know, there's just no denying of it. So okay, you cross that bridge. Now imagine you're the government and you start poking into these things. It puts you in a precarious situation. Sometimes when I sit here, I think to myself, man, maybe I would do the same thing they're doing and just hide it, because I don't know if the collective could understand,
Hmm.
or it would be too overwhelming, because it's going to rewrite our entire metaphysics.
Right.
It's going
Exactly.
to rewrite our entire cosmology.
Religion.
Religion, everything will be
Everything.
rewritten.
Yep.
Um, Obviously, there will be a number of schools of thought that will survive,
Hmm.
that are adaptable and already affirm these beings and realities as a you know a living coherent reality. Like you could even say, like, I mean, just being honest, like a very resilient one to this would be like Buddhism is not going to really, they'll
Mm.
be like, oh yeah, multiple dimensions and there's beings everywhere and
We
things are
know.
going up and down. Like, okay, great, okay,
Yeah.
what I just ordered a latte. It'll be here in 2 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say that the people that will be the most disrupted are the materialists within the Western world.
Right. Yeah. I agree with
They're going to
that.
be disrupted the most.
Yes. Yes, they are. Yeah, I've seen that. I mean, okay, fair enough. The Christian world are very much demonizing it. They're accepting its reality, but
Mhm.
demonizing it.
Yeah.
Those who say there is nothing other than what is materially experienced on this planet, this kind of like atheistic worldview, humanistic worldview, it's going to rock their world. It
Yeah.
really is. Probably most, like you say, more so than most.
Yeah, those are going to be the ones that are rocked the most. The
Mm,
pure materialists are going to be rocked the most. And then the
mm.
next level down will be the, well, they'll be the most antagonistic, will be the ultra conservative Muslims and the ultra conservative Christians,
Right.
and probably ultra conservative Jews, right? So the ultra
Yeah.
conservative Abrahamic religions
Hmm.
will be the most antagonistic,
Resistant.
resistant
Hmm.
to uh, a whole host of things, or it'll all just get shaped up into their things. So, right, so a Muslim will just say they're all jinn,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
all of these are just jinn, and all of this is just a jinn manipulation.
Hmm.
Um, the evangelical Christian will say these are all demons.
Hmm.
These are all just the fallen angels, and everything else is a deception,
Yeah.
right? And so you have, you know, the universalization of the phenomenon as being painted as wholly negative,
Hmm.
um, which, if you are not interested in the subject and you are just an average person that
Hmm.
is just a practitioner of this religion, and you just want to go and have your shop and do your prayer and then go home and make dinner or whatever and spend
Yeah.
time with your family, and you have no desire to like figure this stuff out or care about it, you're just going to be like, yeah, it's just Jen. Yeah, it's just demons. Like you're
Right.
like it makes the psyche settle immediately.
Yeah.
It's a psychological response of safety. It's a psychological response of ease because you don't want to like you're like, do I really want to sit here and restructure everything? Also, if I restructure everything according to my belief system, I could go to hell forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And
Uh,
so you have these things that are within the human collective consciousness field
mhm.
that are so intense and so embedded. And I think for a large part, this is why disclosure hasn't happened.
Mm.
Um, obviously you have the technology point of view, and I'm sure that there's some of that and whatnot, and who
Yeah.
knows. But like also at the same time, just let's just play devil's advocate here. Like let's just assume for a second you really are part of like the United States military, and someone creates a free energy device that also has the capability to be turned into a weapon.
Hmm.
And let's just say like somebody posts the schemata of it online, and now all of the nations of the world have this. That creates a different type of playing field and now a
Right.
whole new set of problems that they're going to have to address. And so I
Right.
actually understand, I can understand, that process and the slowness of it,
Mhm.
because from a technological point of view, there are definitely places in the world where there are certain groups of people that do not have the consciousness level to be able to handle the power that will come out of these various things, right?
That's a
And
great point. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a basic fact, and
Yeah.
I, I'm sure that there are some negative things and there's some stuff that's pushed us off different timelines and whatnot. I'm
Right.
definitely not all like whatever, but like you got to be real about it. Like when you really sit and soberly think about it,
Mm.
it's a very powerful, it's a very powerful reality we're moving into, and in large part, like our own development to be able to handle this is honestly being um, slowed down because of our collective religious understandings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's being slowed down.
It's always been because I've been sort of into disclosure for about 10 years now, and I really like jumped into it. I've listened to everything that they've said, certain public figures in that world, and some people were like, we just need to rip the band-aid off and just let them know everything that's been going on and things. And then some people have been like a little bit more conservative about it, like you're saying, just like cause more harm than good. And I think you just hit the nail on the head that like it would be like if you just gave a civilization or an immature, low consciousness civilization this extreme technology, it would make nuclear power look weak and pathetic.
Exactly.
And it'd be
And there's
like,
crazy people out there that would
right,
use it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think it'd be like giving a baby an AK-47.
Yeah.
It's irresponsible. So there has to be a consciousness shift with the collective, at least to a majority, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
maybe we're at that point because they are starting to disclose things. Maybe they're
I
happy we're at
think
that
I
point.
think we are, and that's why like I can see what they're doing in this very slow matter, and I think partly what they're trying to do is they're trying to withhold Pandora's box, right? So the story of Prometheus,
Hmm.
the story of Prometheus has a lot to do with this, right? So there's two main stories of, let's call it, well, there's three main. Well, there I would say the three biggest within the West that people are aware of in terms of human contact with things, right? You have the sort of Anunnaki story,
Hmm.
Zechariah Sitchin sort of narrative of the Sumerian and the Anunnaki sort of story, and that's one major narrative that sort of that a lot of people see things through.
Yeah.
Two, you have the Book of Enoch, and that's becoming very popular within the Christian camp to see everything
Mhm.
through. And then three, the other story that you can sort of add to the mix, which is also interesting, is the Prometheus myth.
Okay.
And so in the Prometheus myth, Prometheus he goes and steals fire from the gods, from Zeus.
Hmm.
And he steals this very specific type of fire that, well, he sees that humanity is not as advanced as they could be, and he feels like, well, first off, let me take a step back. In Hesiod's Theogony, which is like where he writes, like where we get most of our Greek like foundational story
Right.
understanding, and this around the time of Homer.
Hmm.
He so in that particular Hellenistic Greek religious context, Prometheus is actually the creator of humanity. So Prometheus creates humanity in this
Right.
story.
Right.
So that he creates them, he shapes them and forms them. And by the way, Prometheus is means and is symbolic for forethought. In the Greek, it's about forethought. So like
Mm.
you'll even see Hesiod, he'll say Prometheus and then forethought.
Mm.
So so Prometheus or forethought creates humanity. And he then basically sees that like humanity is just struggling and they need help, and he wants to push humanity to the next level. So he goes up and he steals fire from the gods and he brings it down. So Zeus gets pissed and he's like, dude, why did you do that? Like you shouldn't, that's not cool. Like they're not either ready for it, or he just wasn't happy that he gave it to him. And so Zeus is like, okay, well, you know what? As a result of this, I'm going to create um, this woman who's this fake woman, and he's going to try to trick Prometheus's brother. I forgot what his name is in the Greek, but it's Afterthought. So he goes Afterthought and he basically seduces Afterthought. And Afterthought is the one that opens Pandora's box. And when he
Right.
opens Pandora's box, all of this suffering and chaos and all these various things happen on the civilizational scale.
Mm.
And Prometheus then uh, gets chained up. He gets locked up by Zeus and he gets put on a rock where every day an eagle comes down and eats his liver, and then every day his liver regenerates, and then he's basically in this like sort of like eternal torment
Mm.
until Hercules, Zeus's son,
Mhm.
um, comes and rescues Prometheus uh, from the rock. And by that time, Zeus's anger, basically, Hesiod says, is diminished, and he just basically lets forethought go. But what's interesting about it is that there's a couple very fascinating parts of this story, because it's very, very, very clearly like the story is not written as history. Like the Greek myths and they're not written like the Bible, where
Right.
it's history and myth that they're trying to sort of like interplay together.
Yeah.
The Greek myths are not trying to do that. They're very initiatory and they're very symbolic in their understanding,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, um, like for instance, like I even said, like Zeus's or Prometheus's forethought and its afterthought that ends up, releasing Pandora's box. And so I think in a lot of ways, um, this disclosure, I think, is the um, making sure that this Pandora's box doesn't explode itself on the earth. Now, there could also be obviously capitalistic um, industry, money making
I'm sure of it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
parts that are
I'm
part of it.
sure.
There's
Yeah.
no doubt that that's part of
Mhm.
it. No, no doubt. But at the same time, you do have to think about like, is humanity past the point where they would or wouldn't weaponize these things,
Mm.
right? Isn't as a traditional country like North Korea, or let's say an Islamic country that's at a certain stage in their own development, are they going to look at this technology given by these beings as like something that's God given, or will they use it as an advantage to basically sort of rule over a
Dominate.
given area, right?
Yeah.
Have we actually evolved past that yet?
Right.
It doesn't seem like it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. No, that's a really good point because I remember years ago, it might have even been you saying it, that the biggest problem with humanity is that we weaponize all technology that comes through. And why
Mhm.
do we do that? Why aren't we using it to advance humanity? Why aren't we using it for universal wealth for everybody? And
Yeah. because it could liberate us.
Absolutely. The technology that we already have could liberate us, but with all
Yeah,
this
for
new
sure.
tech that's coming in,
Yeah.
like there has to be structures in place on a when I say governmental level, I'm not just talking about US government, UK government, etc., etc. I'm talking like the ones above them, the ones that we've called the deep state, whatever you want to call them, the ones who've really been in control. There has to be a replacement of those guys, or should I say, um, a forced agenda, should we say, or something where they don't weaponize it and keep it for themselves, where it's used to liberate humanity, where we're no longer enslaved.
Right. I mean, the only way that, I mean, that's theoretically possible, I guess, if there was, obviously like millions of beings showed up and they sort of were like, hey, but the
Yeah.
problem is still like the human response. So humanity and the human goes through different stages of development
Hmm.
and has different levels of development, just like from a kid to a teenager to an adult to, a parent to, middle age to, then an elder and, and
Hmm.
whatnot. So there's obviously these stages we go through that we can see just on like a physical level, but on a consciousness level, it's just as real.
Hmm.
So most of humanity is in first person perspective, right? So they only really care about themselves and their needs.
Hmm.
Um, they only care about themselves and their needs, and they can't even project themselves into other people's experience.
Right.
And you have those types of people within, let's say, very traditional religious understandings. That's a recipe for developing just, a a very unconscious individual
Okay.
that just goes throughout their life because consciousness, it has real essence and it has real development and it can build
Hmm. Hmm.
in an individual. Then you have second person development, which would be uh, being able to see from another person's perspective. Like you and I, we can at least have a you and I, right? So we can have
Hmm.
a conversation. I can see from your perspective, you can see from my
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
right? This is second person. Then you have third person, which is, hey, I can see who we are as a community and how these things, work as a communal understanding and different communities. And then fourth person perspective, which would be, um, you know, what are the ideas that hold our community together?
Mm.
And fifth person perspective would be how were these ideas formed and where did they come from?
Right.
And are they in our best interest?
Hmm.
Right. And so then, you know, that's a really hard place for people to get to is that fourth and fifth. Right. So most people, first, second, third, you and me, maybe seeing your little community or little church, but getting into like where your ideas came from and like where the structural understanding of them is and what happens if you adjusted them and what if there was this other thing, right? So most of humanity isn't in a place to um, to be able to see from that perspective, and that's what makes this process so difficult.
Mm.
And even from like a mystic point of view,
Hmm.
like even just in conversation about mysticism and spirituality and things about God, even just at that level,
Mm.
it can be difficult to have conversations with people in various stages of their development because there just isn't a place for it to land. Like um, their mind
Hmm.
won't be able to understand it. Like it's not in a place of receptivity,
Right.
and um, I think that obviously. it's changing. I think over the next 30 years, it's going to be vastly different,
Hmm.
um, as different generations come and go from this planet.
Hmm.
Um, there will be much more of a and naturally going back to the stars, we are naturally as a global civilization right now being pushed into these developmental levels. Um, and that's also what's making it very difficult because you also have to be real about certain groups and people groups
Hmm.
and that they are in different stages of development. That's a very real thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
For instance, like parts of India, there's trash everywhere. Obviously you have poverty and you have these other conditions that go into it. But then when let's say if they come to like Switzerland, they will still do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the Swiss don't do it, right? So it's not that necessarily like the Swiss are way better people than let's say the Indians of some certain region. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that their development and understanding their relationship to the earth is vastly different.
Hmm. Right.
And as a result of it, and their collective communal understanding of it manifests as a clean place that you go to.
Hmm.
It's a real thing. It manifests as a real thing. It's not an offensive thing.
No, that's just a fact. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we can see that there are real stages of growth. And I think that that's part of the tension in the West right now is that, ultra liberalism in the West that sort of dominated post World War II
Mm.
sort of, neutralized all of humanity to the point that it was like to say that there's different stages of growth or that there's different things within different groups or communities of people, was taboo. But that illusion is breaking, and as a result of it, people in different stages over here are shaming this group over here, and this group over here is like responding to this thing, and so like we're kind of in this like pressure cooker cultural milieu that's happening right
Hmm.
now,
Hmm.
and you know, and a lot of it's just growing pains,
Hmm.
and and in ways that I would say like us, and like just to be fair on both sides of it, like there would probably be some Andean shamanic South American groups that would come to Switzerland and say, yeah, it's great that you guys have all of this clean, but like um you shouldn't do XYZ maybe in this type of mountain because of this particular reason and what it could do. Maybe you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing CERN,
Exact. Right. Good. Great point. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because you don't
Um,
know what you're doing actually to the energetic spiritual forces that embody these mountains.
right. Right.
And
But the
because
the
their stage of
mysticism. Yeah.
growth within understanding the natural beings of this particular thing are way beyond,
Hmm.
let's say, a Swiss person or Western Europeans.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
then they're like, hey, da, 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 da. So we're in this like planetary like thing right now, and it's tense.
That's a really good observation because I was thinking that when you were saying that. Yes. Okay. Certainly in Northern European nations and in the West, we kind of boast we're an advanced civilization. Advanced civilization.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest political issues over here, I don't know what it's like in Spain, but certainly in the US and here, is this immigration issue.
Same here.
It's the same in Spain of just people coming in who don't carry the same values,
Hmm.
and it's causing a lot of societal chaos.
Hmm.
Um, what's the solution? Massive question, but like,
Well,
how do we resolve this?
yeah, well, it's interesting. Going back, let's even go back again to the Greek story. So this is interesting. So Plato has the story of Atlantis.
Hmm.
So in Timaeus, of Plato's work, he definitely recommend listeners to go read it. It's really interesting because it's also a story that was written like 300 years prior, 500, 400 years prior to the Book of Enoch. And Enoch is basically a sort of Jewish response to Plato's Atlantean story.
Interesting. I didn't know
Um,
that. I genuinely didn't know that. Mm.
yeah. So in the Atlantis story, there's this island, and again, Plato's just being very allegorical here,
Mhm.
but basically the story is that Poseidon has this island full of gods and demigods. They're basically him and their kids.
Mhm.
Um, and over time, the demigods, which are like the children of Poseidon and whatever the other gods that are there, I don't remember.
Mhm.
They eventually venture off and they start to mate with humanity. And over time, their generations basically end up sort of diluting the demigod sort of aspect of it. And essentially, it creates a bunch of societal chaos, which then eventually leads to the destruction of Atlantis. So, what's interesting about this is that the Atlantean story is basically this is the perspective of the Watchers,
Mhm.
whereas the Book of Enoch is like the perspective of the humans.
Interesting.
So like in the Enoch story, it's at the Watchers' fault, but in the Atlantean story, it's the demigods and the humans' fault,
Mm. Mm.
essentially. Um, and um, and it has to do with, essentially a breaking down of a group solar spirit because there are real things as group solar spirits. Like,
Mhm.
and it's funny because Westerners will immediately accept this and understand it if I talk about it from an indigenous perspective, like,
Mhm.
oh, the Cherokee or something like this. Like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, yeah, the Cherokee, and like, oh, okay, cool. Or like, if I say like Judaism and like Jews and like Israel, and like they have this group ethos and they have this land and they have this God that they're all connected to and they have this thing. And yeah, and we should go set up their temple for them and we should do all this stuff. And like, Christians are like, they'll see it um, in all these other various groups, but they can't see it, for themselves. Well, it's been that way, but I will say it's changing now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's going to be a really fascinating unfoldment over the next 40 years because um, the old spirits of these lands are waking up.
That's a statement and a half. I absolutely agree. Yeah. Yeah. What's
And
already here is re-emerging, right?
yeah,
Mm.
and so the last time this happened was in Germany prior to World War II, which
Mhm.
obviously ended in disaster. And I definitely, obviously, don't advocate for Nazism or anything, but um, it was a response to certain things. Um, if it continues, I will say this, if it continues to grow more and more chaotic over the next 20 years, the response that will eventually kick in to the native people will be so intense
Mm.
and it will come from a post-Christian Europe
Mm.
that it will be a very dramatic event or events.
Mhm.
And um, the leadership, the boomers. Sorry, I'm not trying to hate on boomers, but it's really been the boomers that the post World War II boomers
Mhm.
that are in positions of power, that have been in positions of power and are in positions of power. Um, you know, they still have this sort of like guilt complex about what it means to really be a Westerner or let's say be a British person or whatever. And like,
Mhm.
not to say that like, hey, I'm sure you wouldn't care if like you know, some person came through legally and was a legitimate person that came from, let's say,
Mm.
India or something or
Yeah, of course.
whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
was like totally chill. Like you would be like, great, yeah, I don't care. But the
Yeah.
problem is that the more and truthfully, like there's this one guy on the internet, Jason Giorgiani. Have you come across him before, Jason Giorgiani?
No, I don't know the name. No.
Okay, you can go in a rabbit hole with him. He's an interesting guy. He's big in the disclosure stuff, so I thought maybe you would. But
Okay,
he's a
I'll check him out.
philosopher guy. He's an Iranian thing. But he does talk about he thinks that basically like Western civilization is a tug of war between the Zionists and the Nazis.
Hmm.
And um, you can see him play out on both sides, but the Nazi side of it is the most interesting thing to me because it was something I never really considered before. But basically, his theory behind it is that if they were that in these positions of power, their role is to make it as chaotic as possible because it's only when it's so chaotic
Hmm.
and so bad that you cry out for somebody like that to
Come
come
sort it
and
out.
clean up the mess,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? So you create the conditions to be like, hey, we want this thing to take our XYZ back, or we want XYZ back, right? And
mhm,
but it's a real thing because the spirits of these lands are waking up, and people are in their DNA and their connected space to these very particular places and these very particularly interesting angelic forces
mhm.
and land forces, and they want to um, hold up the structures of light that have been there. And, if it all goes down and it changes, then, well, whatever, that's just the way it's going to be. And humanity will move forward through that. But there really are ancestral lands.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's very real.
Do you
There's
think the?
ancestral plants, there's ancestral mountains,
Yeah, yeah.
there's ancestral animals, there's ancestral rivers and lakes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's connected at the human level, the DNA level, and it moves all the way up into the heavenly sphere, into the higher realms.
Mm.
And, you know, if I were to have a conversation, let's say with a South American shaman, they would say, yeah, this is what we learned when we like come out of our womb and we can see
Hmm.
this. Like this is not nothing new.
Yeah.
But in the West, you know, there's 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 been a push to destabilize what that possibly could be. Now,
Right.
I do think on one level, the positive side of it is that it's pushing us into, again, those other perspectives very quickly because, um, it's making things difficult and it's sort of like a pressure cooker of things. But it's also going to awaken um, the next generation of Europeans to their ancestral heritage, and that's what's going to happen. And
Hmm.
how that ends up unfolding is going to be really fascinating.
Hmm. Hmm. I feel that deeply. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and you probably feel that in the UK.
100%, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, obviously, it's a very ancient land here, and I mean, all over Spain, and I find it interesting because I've travelled to the US a few times now, and what a mishmash of cultures it is. It's
Yeah.
just it's literally like it is globalism in a country in a sense. It's like you've got every culture represented there, which
Oh yeah.
which is a beautiful. It's beautiful. It's amazing, and how everyone gets along. And I know there's history, negative history with certain aspects, but um, like here we're very set in our ways, and we've been, how can I word it? There's been a huge pushback to what has been called an invasion from foreign nations of people coming in illegally. And it's been an offence to the soul of this land, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well, and I think yes, and I think part of the problem is that the people on, like, let's say the right that are leading this and
mm,
whatnot, I think a
mm,
lot of the language needs to change,
I agree. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right? Like, first off, like, if you really want to push it, it would be like if you guys have to start using the word indigenous.
right.
We are the indigenous,
Yeah,
and you're colonizing,
yeah.
right? So you're using the like
The language usually used against us.
the language that's used against you,
Yeah, yeah.
but it frames up the mind very quickly
Mm,
because you guys are the indigenous of the land.
right, right. Yeah. Yeah, and politically they've tried to tell us we're not. They tried to tell us that if you hold a British passport, then you are indigenous. Like that's just not true. That's just not true. And there is a cry going out from here now, remembering the very things you're talking about. Like something is awakening in the elemental
Oh yeah.
aspects in a massive, massive way. People are reconnecting with their roots. They're reconnecting with their spirituality.
Oh yeah.
And on the surface, it looks like, political Christian nationalism, which I think that's just a three-dimensional sign of something deeper going on.
Oh yeah.
Um,
For
yeah.
sure.
Mm,
And I mean, look, in Europe in general, there's going to be two major things that happen. One, obviously, there will be a Christian revival.
hmm
That's Anglican, Catholic, traditional
hmm
um, aspects of it. It will be less Protestant, actually.
Right.
And then the other thing will be a major emergence of Western paganism.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is going to be a huge thing over the next 30 to 40 years. It like
Mm.
buckle up.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Glastonbury?
I have heard of Glastonbury.
Yeah. It's like it's a place. It's like meant to be the heart center of the planet. It's a place down the south of England.
Okay.
It's that's a huge place for kind of like, well, we would just call them hippies, but they're so connected to the elements. Every shop is a crystal shop, and um, everybody's really kind of very, very, I guess you would call pagan in many ways, but they're very accepting, very, very kind, very loving, on a certain level. Um, I've been there a couple of times now, and it's a very, very interesting place. And I feel they're tapping into what we're talking about. And it looks like on the surface that, because they would traditionally be left wing, like, freedom for all, anti government, anti establishment. And they're against all this immigration, which I find really fascinating,
Yeah, because they're connected to the land spirits.
Right, right.
Because a human isn't just a human. A human is a vessel of multidimensional beings.
Yeah, yeah.
And um, you know, uh and these forces that are very real um create certain states of consciousness.
Mm,
And when a certain community of people are in a certain state together and create, let's say, something beautiful, the chaotic mix that comes into it, again, like this is like that demigod thing, not to
mhm,
say, whatever, but
mhm.
it what it basically means is what we're experiencing is the destruction of Atlantis again,
Right, right.
right? And what comes out of the ashes of it will be, whatever, or maybe it'll shift, but regardless, at the end of the day, not to say like there's hatred towards, a group of people or
Mm,
whatever, but
mhm,
it's just um Christian charity is being taken advantage of,
mhm, mhm,
and the Western sort of ethos of trusting your neighbor and like developing that sort of like ethos that's been, the bedrock of it is going to be challenged.
mhm.
And it's going to be intense. It's
Right.
going to be it's going to be but through going back to, I mentioned quickly, Steiner kind of talked about this, and I agree with him. He basically says like, look, it's going to be a reality that comes, and you can't fight it, you just have to transmute it.
Right. Mhm,
So what does the transmutation of this process actually look like? What does that look like in transmuting these various groups or whatever, and how that sort of unfolds? It's going to be really interesting.
mm,
The there's no, the choices being made by these people obviously are very the leaders are very irrational. I obviously think on some level of it, it's economic, obviously, from like a, let's say like Elon Musk's point of view would be like, okay, yeah, it's societally chaotic, but we need more people so you get more GDP so that,
Hmm.
the stock market doesn't go down, so that, you've
Yeah.
got labor so that there's more apartments being paid for by rent for these people, like, right? So there's a capitalistic, desire for this because Westerners are not having as many kids in general, and obviously the population is declining.
Hmm.
So you have just a lot of things that are coming into the mix and why it's happening.
Hmm.
But regardless, it's shaking up some old spiritual wells, and there are new forces that are essentially old forces, I should say, that are making themselves will continue to make themselves known in through the will of the indigenous people.
Right. Yeah, I totally see that. And just thinking from what we were saying there, just shifting it ever so slightly, because I feel like we're kind of skirting around almost an elephant in the room now. And I just want your perspective on it, what you think about this, because I find, certainly in myself, but certainly in society in general, we're very, we try and make things very black and white. Like, we try and identify an enemy, call them bad, and demonize them and try and resist them. Now, there's been this huge, certainly since 2020 and everything that went on there, there's been this huge kind of collective awareness over, the evil behind the man behind the curtain, the one who's really pulling the strings of world events and things like this. And we want to say they're evil, they're bad, and we need to resist them. And there's a whole, I mean, I would say the Trump movement is very much founded upon that mentality.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's somehow like a resistance to the man behind the curtain. From a higher kind of mystic, certainly a Christocentric mystic perspective, do you see things like that? Do you see things are that black and white?
No.
I didn't think so. That's what I'm picking up. How do you see things as they're unfolding? I know it's a big question.
Yeah. Well, look, it's you have to unpack the nature of consciousness, the
Right.
nature of the mind, and in the nature of the soul, and what each person is and who they are. But in addition to that, you know, like I said, we're not aware that we are avatars, let's say, of
Hmm.
higher forces all the time.
Right.
Jesus was trying to make that pretty clear.
Right. Yeah.
So you have a whole mix of things that are coming into the play, and that's what makes it difficult. And then you also have stages of development
Mm.
and stages of consciousness and stages of and those developmental stages can be environmental stages of development. They could be in societal structural, it could be within loving stages, right? There's multiple different types of stages. Um, it could be in an intellectual stage of development. It could be an athletic stage of development,
Hmm.
right? So there's all of these various developmental processes that the human can be moving through in various degrees. And so, obviously, like the Trump movement likes to sell it like that, but and obviously nothing's really happened with any of that.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I mean, he's in the Epstein files, so of course not. Um, but um, and I do think that he genuinely cares, but it's also very clear that there's other interests that are moving within him and through him.
Mm. Mm.
So, that complicates things. Um, but there is a tendency within the human to cry out for the simplicity of it, which is how fascism arises,
Right. Right.
and because it does provide a very simple answer.
Hmm.
the more complex it gets. And it's just like, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a crazy thing. It could be something like in El Salvador where they cleaned up their country.
Hmm.
You know, they got all those guys off the street. Now it's one of the top three safest countries in the world to live in when 10 years ago it was the worst.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it wasn't like it was overly complicated about what they did and why. So, um, but the nice thing about the El Salvadorian thing about it was that like it wasn't like, oh, and also you need to be like this religion and you need to, you have to like this what happened in Spain. You have to go to mass like, 2 days a week, otherwise you get punished by the state. Like, no, forget all that. Like that's where all these things sort of like went kind of crazy. And then also obviously like, genociding a group of people doesn't help either.
Hmm.
Um, or, whatever on all those various levels. So but yeah, it's not super black and white. And the other thing is that when you look into the eye of let's say of an illegal immigrant,
Hmm.
when I look at them, because I see them all the time here in Spain, you know, I can see how tormented they are,
Hmm. Right.
spiritually, emotionally, mentally, a lot of them. A lot of them are have they're living in various tough situations. They come from a tough situation. I could see, hey, if I was born in Senegal and I see how Europeans live on my phone, I probably would try to hop on a boat and get over there too,
Hmm.
especially if they're letting you in.
Hmm.
Right? Like I 100 this is a second, third person perspective, right? I can see why they're doing it.
Right. Right.
100%.
Hmm.
Now, of course, they don't all just know that like, hey, when they get here, it's not like it's just going to be easy and there's not all these institutions that just whatever. And then there's like a homeless stuff and then there's like the suffering thing and they're like, obviously they're here and they get free healthcare, but you can also see they're kind of like, oof, this wasn't necessarily the dream that I necessarily had before I made this big journey.
Hmm.
So when I look into their eyes, I can see their story, I can see their struggle, and I can also see God.
Hmm. Hmm.
And um, and I can see me in there.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I can also be like, okay, I can see that, but this is what frustrates me about Western policies because they think that they're doing them all a favor when they're making not only them like the indigenous people suffer, but they're also making them suffer because they're not necessarily getting the dream life that they had hoped when they were making the journey.
Yeah. Right.
So there's a dual suffering that takes place.
Hmm. Hmm.
So because they don't fully understand or whatever, there could be, this, various things. And then obviously then there's animosity that starts to happen between the indigenous and,
Hmm.
the people that are coming in illegally. And so then that creates this sort of tensional field. Um, and obviously at the end of the day, the policies are going to have to change. That will fix it. I don't know how that will end up happening, but in the meantime, until then, the reason it's not so black and white is because I can see God there.
Right. Mm.
And it's tough. I can see their suffering. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, this is what I'm saying, where like Christian empathy and compassion gets weaponized
Hmm. Hmm.
because then it's like, but where I think it's going to change is in the ideology and understanding of the people so that they're voting in different types of people so that certain things begin to shift.
Hmm. Right.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, look, we're all on this planet together, man. We're on this spinning rock in outer space, you know, and there's multiple dimensions here. There's crazy beings. We got disclosure. We talking about, slowly being seeded to us.
Hmm.
And we're on this journey together. We're all on the planet together right now, all of these souls. So we're all karmically tied as a unit right now.
Hmm.
And we are here on this plane together right now. Now we're going to have to fix the indigenous things and things are going to be a little, but at the same time, at it from the next dimension up, looking down, okay, we're on this planet together. And, you know, if you're going to create chaos and destruction, XYZ, obviously society will have to, there'll have to be structures to manage those various things so that it doesn't become a total collapse.
Mm.
But from a human to human perspective, what we're talking about here is, we're in this relational moment together. And I think as Westerners, I think what the thing is, like, holding within their consciousness, creating the true, the good, and the beautiful,
Hmm.
and teaching people about that.
Right, right. So like a kind of spiritual education. I think I can definitely see that the desire for these deeper meaning in things rising in the normal everyday people. I think
Hmm.
some kind of like a spell was broken almost in since 2020 really, like with everything that went on. I'm trying not to use the words just in case it's a trigger point on YouTube. That's I'm trying to talk
No, I
around it.
understand. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But with everything that happened, it was like, everyone was forced to stay at home. Everyone was, the whole monotony of normal daily life was completely broken. And all of a sudden, everyone was just like, oh, what's going on? And people were asking deeper questions. People were like, and then there was seemingly this complete consciousness shift. People were starting to wonder and ask, what's the point of my existence? They weren't just going to Monday to Friday 9 to 5. What's the sport on a Saturday? Go to church on a Sunday. This continual loop, that had been
Hmm.
broken. And I think since then, I can see it. I don't disagree if you want, but that there is a desire for the deeper things rising, and I think
Yes.
this is true disclosure, and it's not
Yes.
it's not governments telling us these things are real.
Hmm.
It's people going, these things are real, and the
Oh
government
yeah.
going, heck yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that brings up a great point. And part of that, is because like so in the ancient world they understood the ether as the spiritual world between the place between the higher spiritual worlds and matter.
Mm,
And so the earth has this like etheric body. Steiner has a lot of great writings on it, and you can begin to see it, experience it. You can have, you know, in the Eastern systems, they would certain parts of it would be chi and prana.
mm-hmm,
The energy essentially within the material existence, the
mm-hmm,
electromagnetic fields of things as well. And so this body, which is a very real thing that you have and that every living thing has, is changing. The Earth's etheric body is changing.
yes, yeah, yeah,
And as a result of it, our perception is changing. And that's also why we're seeing more of it.
mm,
Because we're starting to be able to see it more.
mm,
Like our literal human perception is changing.
mm-hmm, right, yeah,
Um, and as the etheric body begins to regenerate itself, which is what we're in a process of right now, it's regeneration of the ether. And like all of the like myths of the dying and rising god stories of the ancient world, whether it's Dionysus or Osiris or Mithra even, and
mm-hmm,
um, even in some cases, like you could say Persephone, a lot of these have to do with, or Inanna, these have to do with this etheric body and how the different processes it goes through. And we've been in like this sort of like winter period for the past 1500 years with it,
mm-hmm,
2000 years, but it's starting to warm up.
mm-hmm,
And just like in the springtime, when you see all the flowers and everything beginning to resprout,
right,
we're sort of in this transition phase of like the sort of like end of winter sort of experience. And as a result of it, the human clairvoyance, the human clairaudience, so being able to see and hear spiritually, is going to start to become more universally charged amongst, let's say, the normies of just the average person.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I mean, it's going to take time, but but that's part of this hunger and this thing that snapped people out of it. And people are going into these deeper things. And also the accessibility to it is getting easier.
Mm, mm,
And that's opening itself up.
right. So where can you see us in like civilization in, say, let's say, I mean, there was a big thing, everyone's been talking about Agenda 2030 and whether
Yeah.
it's a negative agenda. I mean, we're very close to that now. Many people believe that that agenda has been thwarted, um, and that we're on this kind of positive timeline trajectory now, to create like what's been dubbed a golden age. There's a lot
Yeah.
of hope out there. Is it hopium, do you think, or do you think we're genuinely on a trajectory now for the biggest changes, positive changes that humanity have had in a very long time?
There's so many factors that play into it that like I think like anyone that says they have a clear vision of the future is like it's just straight up liar. Like there's so many possibilities in so many different timelines that we could be taken down based on human choice,
Right, right,
that it's overwhelming. But I will say that it feels very 50-50 to me.
right.
It feels on one hand, it feels very dystopian, the possibility,
Hmm.
with AI and just everything. And
Right.
then and just different systems and how that's going to unfold. And then the other side of it, though, like we talked about earlier, it could be very liberative. And
Mm,
I think it's really going to come down to how we develop ourselves in our heart fields,
right.
how we develop these technologies, how we can insert our heart fields into these technologies. And and the thing that we really have to wake up to is who we are. You know, if humans don't wake up to what they are as a like as a being, as a spirit being, like as an incarnation of the divine spirit on earth,
Hmm.
and what that actually means,
Hmm.
and what the soul actually is, and the whole process of that, and what your I is. You know, it, I think we can. I think there will be more movement of that and more opening of that,
Hmm.
but it will be hard. I mean, I don't know. But I think it'll be harder to stay in that particular thing, if we stay, super asleep and unconscious.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean that's essentially the name of the game. But I think podcasts like this or people like, hey, like if you want to hop into my meditations that I'm doing, helping people get to these various things, blah blah blah. I mean,
Yeah.
come on in. Like, this is, I'm trying to do my part.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think millions and millions of people do their part. I think that it really can. I do think that we've definitely shifted a lot of crazy negative timelines. There's no doubt about it.
I
I
agree.
sense that. I feel that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the future, I think at the end of the day, there's always hope because we can envision it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
because we can envision it still, there's hope.
Right. Exactly. And I was in, take of this what you will. I was in, because I practice meditation and prayer, and I guess some people call it ascension and things like this, where we go in and go up and things like
Yeah.
this. And one time I just heard, um, the infrastructure that was designed to enslave humanity will be used to liberate humanity.
Hmm.
So, everything's going digital. I think currency's going digital. Like you said, we've got AI, and lots of things. Um, like currency as we've known it is collapsing. All around us, it's collapsing,
Oh yeah.
and I think that's by design. I think that it's a demolition. of what has essentially enslaved humanity in many ways. Um, I mean, Elon Musk is now talking about a universal basic income, that everyone should have a particular standard of living on a universal basic income. Now, it raises the question, will the government control how you use that basic income? And these are the sorts of questions that we need to be asking. You
Yeah.
know, like you say, it could go either way. And I really think it's what choices are we making individually and collectively.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I choose to visualize and in a positive future for everybody. Like everyone on
Mhm.
this planet deserves dignity, um, and a successful, prosperous life. There is enough material, there is enough resource on this planet for everybody to live well.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I believe, and I choose to see that future for everybody. How it happens, unless I'm put in a position where I have to make these decisions, I don't know. But like,
Yeah. No, I think that's the work.
yeah, yeah, I would
We
agree.
have to.
Yeah,
We have to, it's so vital and it's important. And I think it's why we're here now.
I agree. I agree, and I think that's why we have to have these conversations. And everybody's. I think one of the big things that got me into kind of like, well, my kind of journey was the law of attraction. Everyone seems to go when they have a spiritual awakening. It's like point number one, law of attraction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know there's flaws in that. As you develop, you realize
Get
that.
me the money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically, people start to realize,
Yeah.
like, my life is completely ruled by this false kind of thing we call money. It doesn't even exist. It's just pieces of paper. There's nothing back in it. It's like part of the awakening that I find with so many people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy, and it's like the realization that this world, or the systems of this world, you said it earlier, the systems of this world are based on illusion. It's like a big magic trick,
All of it.
and I think what's happening is that illusion is collapsing, while simultaneously people are waking up spiritually. People are starting to see their intuition, like you said, the clairvoyance, the clairaudience is developing kind of organically.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm
Yeah.
actually really encouraged. And I think the fact that we can have conversations like this and talk about these things, I am genuinely encouraged. Yes, okay, I see things going on in the world that I really wish weren't happening. Absolutely right.
Hmm.
But as I think we're going to have to end it here. But
Yeah.
as a mystic, as someone who I think what you do is what I often find with mystical people, like, is you never get a straight answer.
For
And,
sure.
and and I think that's by design, because it's not designed to provide answers. It creates more questions, and then the
Hmm.
answer to that will create more questions, and then you're on the ongoing journey of growth, I guess.
Hmm.
But any sort of final words, like what? And also tell us about things that you've got on as well. And anything you want to promote, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy to promote. I do have a retreat in Sardinia in September, so if you're interested,
Ah, Sardinia, amazing.
yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Meditation retreat, and also doing some other stuff as well. Um, yeah, final words would just be, I think the most important thing right now is like really learn to become aware of your thoughts, become aware of your emotions,
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
um, open up your heart world and your heart space,
Hmm.
um, and really go on a journey to discover who you are and what you are. Because in that journey, you'll also discover God in deeper ways in that process. But the reason I'm saying that, and like obviously, a lot of times people are like, just go on a journey and discover God. And I agree, go on a journey and discover God. Yes, do that too. But also simultaneously go on a journey and go deeper into yourself and what your soul really is. Have you actually really sat and felt your soul for an hour and
Mm,
just felt your consciousness
mm.
unfolding the reality that you're experiencing right now?
Right.
Yeah, sit in that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because this is an ocean of revelation here, an ocean of presence.
Mm. Mm.
So, sometimes I just want to like just get straight to the point and just tell people like, hey, look, I climbed behind the veil and this is the Oz that I saw. But like, I know that like people aren't necessarily ready for that yet.
Mm. Mm.
And there's also something in the journey itself that you gain through the process of that, because ultimately like what people are really trying to find it is the answer of what they are and who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say lastly is like a final thing, look, God is more loving, more blissful, more good than you could ever imagine.
Mm.
More intelligent, more wise, more graceful than you could ever comprehend.
Mm.
You are so much older, more interesting, more deep than you could ever imagine.
Right.
And you bring great value to the world. And we're here together for a reason. And in that discovery of what you really are, you will find shalom, you will find peace,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll realize there's nothing to worry about anymore.
Mm. Mm. That's
You
beautiful.
will realize where you come from and where you're going.
Mm.
You can be immortal, but guess what? You already are immortal. Your soul has like this could be, imagine you were 1 billion years old and now you're here right now, but you forgot.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one part of your journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But with God, what Christ is doing, and so just expand yourself and see where that takes you.
Beautiful. Boom. There we go.
Boom.
There we have it. Taylor, I love it. I love these sorts of conversations because, like I say, it's lifted about 1 million questions, and that's the way it should be. That's a good thing, and I love how you deliver it. And if you've got any links, I'll put them in the description.
Okay.
So people can look down there. But thank you for joining me. It's been a treat as always, and keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. I will speak to you soon. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me on. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was great. And yeah. Are you still recording or you?
Yeah, still recording.
Okay.
I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye.